What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Shane Sam Show. Great to be back with you again today. And I get to talk to one of my favorite speakers on the planet Earth, Dale Wilshire. What are you doing, Dale?
Oh, I am thrilled to be here. It's a summer day, and I love to spend time with you, Shane.
It is a rainy day in Kentucky. It's summer
Oh,
here, but we have not had rain in about a month. So I'm like, thank
well,
you, rain. Bring the rain. And I'm sitting in front of this big. If you're watching this on YouTube, like watch this. I'm sitting over this porthole window. When I bring my hands down, it's just like the light from heaven shines down upon me. I like have all the lights in this room off because I'm like, there is no lighting. My kids they steal my USB cords off these stupid lights that I've gotten here. So I had to take the little block from the window out because it was the only way you could see me because my kids have taken all of my USB cords. So that's how it works. We're parents. We have kids.
yes.
Things happen, right?
Yes.
So Dale, tell everybody real quick, we're going to get into like speaking here and how important it is for building a brand in this day and age and, combating AI with our stories and all that stuff. But tell everybody just a little bit about you and like, your background and what you do. And then we'll talk about how you got into speaking and stuff.
Yeah, well, I would say I'm primarily a life and leadership coach. And so that's a lot of the business. That's where I started with this. I had been speaking prior to that, but I always tell everybody I spoke in the faith-based world, which was very rewarding, but I made Starbucks cards and potpourri. So it really did not support life.
Oh my gosh. Starbucks cards and potpourri.
Yeah,
you can't eat potpourri, Dale. You can't eat it.
Not a lot of love in the love offering as far as, being able to pay my bills. So, part of my story is I was a single mom for a long time and I took on full custody of all four of my daughters. And so that was part of my challenge is finding a way to do what I do and sustain life, but to stay true to who I am. So my brand is all about your authentic personality. I do it through all of my speaking engagements. I now speak to a lot of women's ERG groups in corporate. I speak to a lot of conferences, but I still keep my vibe as a life and leadership coach. I speak to a lot of women's groups, but I speak to mixed groups, and I speak on really how to make the most of your time and your talent. And so I talk about being authentic, being who you were designed to be, and kind of pushing back the bias. There's gender bias. There's all kinds of bias, even against who we are, and being able to bring out the best in who you are. And then I met you a couple of years ago because I wanted to start a membership community, which I did, thanks to you. And
you saw me through speaking, which is so weird.
I did. I did.
I feel like all my friends now are just like people who saw me talk or I saw them talk, and we hang out on podcasts and stuff,
That's how most of my clients even find me. They heard my story in some way, shape, or form through speaking. And it's my favorite way because I feel like they got to know me a little bit before we even started. So I have, online courses and a variety of things. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat in our business, but I live in Boulder, Colorado, and loving life.
I'm jealous about that because I have a plan someday. I've got like 4 places where I want to live, and I'm kind of triangulating on when it's 75 degrees there. And like that's so Boulder, Colorado is one of those spots. It's like, okay, I got this 3-month window where it's perfect, and then I move on to Utah, and then I go somewhere else. Right. So like that's my grand art. That's the ending of my story if I can get there like someday. I love your mission because maximizing time and talent, right? Time is, of course, our great limiting factor. We all have to somehow balance the time, but people don't realize like how much talent they really have. Like people hear the word talent and they think LeBron James or some ultra uber crazy, but you have an ultra uber talent like inside you. You have an idea, you have a gift to be able to go out like to the world and like focusing on maximizing your unique talent. That's kind of what I do, but it's more like on the idea space. But you're actually like, no, you can do things, and I'm going to help you get it out there.
Absolutely. And it's how you do a career pivot, because I'll do some career work. It's how you bring out the best in the work you're doing, or really get very targeted on the way you're going to move your business. So to me, it's stewardship. We were given strengths. We were given gifts. And it's hard to read the label from inside the jar. So sometimes we need people outside of us to kind of help us see that.
We
tend to overlook our strengths because they feel so like familiar and kind of no big deal. But
run of the mill, everyday stuff we do, basically.
Yeah. Like it's part of why we're here and what we're supposed to impact. So,
So let me ask you a question. So speaking is near and dear to my heart. Like I did not know that I had a talent for speaking, which is hilarious because I won't shut up half the time. But like when we started our, I think I got into teaching because like I was so comfortable getting in front of a classroom, right? And I thought that was teaching, but it was really like speaking to an audience. And then I got into podcasting because I was like, well, I like to talk and I like to say things and I want to record it and let other people listen. And a lot of people listened. And then I started going out as a guest on podcasts. And that was like that's kind of like that's the closest
Yeah.
thing to speaking.
Yes.
It's like going on another person's stage. And then I got the opportunity to speak and I got in front of the crowd and I realized, wow, so many people are afraid to do this. I'm not afraid to do this. So many people don't realize how much work goes into every word of a talk. I'm willing to do that work. And speaking changed everything in our business. It took everything we did to a level that I had not even planned, envisioned, like or imagined. But it all came down to that first time I went on a stage in front of like 2,500 people and I was like, oh my God, I have to say these words out loud, right? So like what got you into speaking? Like what was that first gig, or did you get pulled up on a stage, or did you seek it out? Like what was that first gig
It
like?
wasn't your story. I'll tell you that. I came from the other side. So in college, I was an officer in my sorority. I went to the University of Georgia. We had 200 women in the sorority. So every, I don't know, week or month, I had to go and give an actual report out on the scholarship committee. And it was horrifying to me. It was terrifying. In fact, I would just overthink it for days before I got out, worried about what everybody would think of me. And I would shake like a leaf and my voice would shake. I mean, people came to watch the spectacle of me speaking. It was that bad. It was like a 60-second panic attack in front of all these people. And so when I left college, I vowed that I would never have to endure that again. And so in my first job, I started a Toastmasters group for my company. I went to Toastmasters because there was something in me that I, like you, I have the heart of a teacher. So there's some performance in it. Like I like to entertain. I like to bring some humor. It helps people to soften, and emotion makes people remember and learn and then take them on a deeper journey. And speaking does that. So I was committed to it, but I had to get out of my head and be more concerned about my message than the way people were receiving me. And probably, and as it grew, because there was something in me that said, you've got to do this. I mean, I loved it. And probably the biggest compliment I ever got was like years ago when I spoke to this mom's group, about 100 women in the room. And this one woman, all of a sudden there's something happening in the back of the room. I'm like, are we okay? And she goes, it's okay. My child just threw up, but I caught it in my hands because I didn't want to miss this.
That's incredible. One time we were, I'm so embarrassed to share this out loud. Like, so one time, me and Jocelyn, we were new parents. We had 2 little kids, and you don't get a lot of time to go do anything when you've got 2 little kids. And I went to this Mexican restaurant. And I was sitting there, and Anna Jo was so little she could still stand in the booth, but she wasn't big enough for the high chair, kind of that in between stage. And all of a sudden, she goes, "Mom, I feel sick," and she vomited, exorcist level vomit. I mean, green, chunky, disgusting. I mean, just I mean, it was like, oh, she was hitting the table, and Jocelyn like pulled her back, and she's like, oh, all over Jocelyn, and she's like, oh, in the floor, and Jocelyn looked over at me and I looked at her and we were like, what do we do? And we just got up and walked out. I'm so embarrassed to say that we did that, but we were so panicked. We had no clue what to do. And it was just like one of those parenting moments. You're like, I caught it in my hand. I just keep going. Nothing to see here. Everybody just go about your business, right? So I can feel that woman's horror of holding that vomit and like, this is really good. And I looked down at my food and I was like, God, this was going to be delicious.
I know.
Now it's not, right? You know what, though? But sometimes what's happening is more important than all the vomit on the floor. That's just the way it works, right? That's just true. Hey, tell me more about Toastmasters. Toastmasters is something I know about. Yeah. But like, I never had the benefit of it. But like, for people who are wanting to get into speaking, like it's like people come together to practice speaking. Is that what it is? Like, what is Toastmasters?
And I haven't done it in a long time, but and we were talking before we started the show. We'll get to, I'm in the National Speaker Association. So what I find is that people do either one or the other, or some do both. So Toastmasters is usually more about the art of speaking. So if you want practice speaking, because you'll learn extemporaneous speaking, like today's topic is green beans. Everybody come up and talk about green beans. Or you have, and at the same time in those meetings, then people will have prepared a speech and then they give it. And they're getting feedback from people who are doing the same thing. What I love it is you are in the arena with everybody else who is taking their turn. So
and there's local chapters of this, right?
Yes,
Like there's local
tons of
chapters
them.
all over
Lots
the
of
place. Yeah.
companies have them. So it is a really affordable and I think just motivating, but very welcoming way to start into speaking. And then the National Speaker Association, like I said, we've got people who do both. It's more about building your business as a speaker.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot
Getting
of different
booked and
ways.
paid to speak, like getting
Yes,
out there,
and we still learn
networking with
about
speakers. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I need to join the National Speakers Association.
Yes, you do, Shane.
I keep putting that off, but
Yes.
like I know so many, my network is all speakers now and they're all in that stupid thing. And I need to freaking join. Does that have chapters too, or is it one big organization?
Yeah, and Kentucky actually is really like I think they've been around for a long time, but I've heard really incredible things about what Kentucky is doing as a chapter. I don't know which city it meets in, but the national event.
Not mine. I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Hey,
yeah,
you're driving wherever you're going. But we have our national event every year, and that's happening in Denver in a few weeks. And then and that's a kind of a cool way to start in because you'll see all your friends there.
Oh yeah, I always if I can find an excuse to go to Denver, Colorado, I just make it. So Jocelyn, I got to go on a business trip. I'm sorry. It's a big speaker thing. You know what I'm saying? Jocelyn, well, if I say speaker, Jocelyn will be like, no, because she doesn't speak. She doesn't go on stage. She doesn't want to be like out front, like at all, you know? Let me ask you this. So you're really ingrained in the speaking world. I love the business that you built based on speaking. I think it is the greatest marketing channel. We talked about how you said earlier when we were off air, it's a shortcut to know, like, and trust, right?
Yes.
So like, so you go through speaking, you learn how to do it. Why did you pick speaking as your primary channel? Like, did you see an opportunity to go out and get more coaching clients? Did you just finally hone these skills where you're like, I'm really good at this? Like, and then because you kind of have like, that is your main channel, right? Like that's the main way you go out and grow
that
your business.
And referrals for my coaching business. It's my favorite. So like you, I've always found myself teaching, even when my kiddos were little. It was, vacation Bible school. It was in the adult classes. I was always teaching. So this was a way to do it in a much more fun way. And I'm also
fun.
very
oh my gosh, it's
business-minded.
so fun.
So
Speaking
I like to bring joy into the business world as well. So what I found is, like, when I wrote my book, it was excruciating. I hired a coach. It took years. That there are two ways to do it. There you can write and get your message out that way, or you can speak. And what I love about speaking, and so most speakers have to write in order to have a bigger platform, and then writers will have to speak at some point. But we have a favorite. And I found with speaking, I could do things with my voice that I didn't have to describe in words as tone. I could just do it. And it felt very intuitive to me. And like I said, my style is very authentic. I share all kinds of stuff I processed. I don't share things I'm going through, but in an appropriate way to bring something very real to my audiences and to teach them something. So it's always been the thing that has gotten me clients. And I think because I started with it, I get paid for it and I get clients for it as well.
Double dipping, baby. That's what I'm talking about. You said something very profound there, and I just want to make sure that the audience hears this. If you're a speaker, you're going to have to write a book. And if you're a writer, you're going to have to speak. It's the only way they grow. And I find that people say, well, I'm a speaker, or I'm an author, or I'm a coach, or I'm an entrepreneur. They say all those things, and I always laugh because I'm like, you're all four, and you just don't know it yet. And I'm the same way with the book. So my book's coming out. I don't know when this is going to air, but my book's coming out in September of 2024. Awesome. Our first book. It took 2 years, the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm an excellent communicator. I don't know what the problem was. And I could not figure it out. I was like, why is this so freaking hard? Because if you just hand me a microphone, I can go just start talking for 45 minutes. But it is weird how you fall into that one core bucket. But the process of writing the book made my speeches better. The process of writing the book made my interviews better. It made me a better interviewer, having to kind of go through that process by myself. Right? Did you find that true with the book as well?
Yes. Yeah. And we could do this all day, Shane. I could talk to you about this all day.
Oh, this is geek out mode. We're in geek out mode now. We're talking shop.
Yes. But the thing that I realized quickly is that when I wrote, I went into this very serious kind of in my head voice, and it was not my speaking voice. And I don't know that my first book really got there. And so now with ChatGPT and all the resources we have to be able to create those together, to create that voice that is authentic, because it's like when people pray and they're like, "Oh Lord." And that's what happened in my book. Like, I don't talk like that. What the heck?
And that's what you don't want the reader to hear. You don't want the reader going,
They
"Oh
don't
Lord.
want that.
Oh
Yeah.
Lord." Yeah.
Oh, like really serious. And so I think for those of us who are natural speakers, again, we can do a lot with our body. We can do a lot with our voice, the inflection. We don't even realize we're doing that. With words, you have to describe every single part of that. It is so analytical. But like you said, it has brought more structure. I still write out every one of my talks.
For sure.
Because it makes them better, as you're saying, and it helps me articulate and clarify my message. And it really is taking something that's in our amygdala and it's putting it into the prefrontal cortex. So that's what language is all about. So to me, I get the benefit of both parts, and my audiences do too.
I didn't really have ChatGPT till the end. It was the second half of the process where ChatGPT got writing our book, right? And everybody was using it. And a member of my team figured out one day, they went into ChatGPT and they were writing an email to our list. And they put it in ChatGPT and they were like, "Do you know who Shane Sams is from Flip Lifestyle?" And it said, "Yes, I know who it is." And it wrote a bio for me because all my podcast transcripts for the first 800 shows were uploaded into the internet and it was in the data set.
Yes.
And it said, "Write an email, rewrite this email in the style of Shane Sams from Flip Lifestyle." And oh my gosh, it sounded exactly like the way I actually talk. And when I found that out, I was like, wait a minute, because my book was going like that. I was trying to write it. And I took a story about one of our success stories, our case studies. And I had written their story out, but it felt really, like you said, oh Lord, very stiff. And I was like, and when I tell the story on stage, like people are like laughing and cheering and all this stuff. I'm like, why does it sound so terrible? And I put it into ChatGPT and I was like, write this to make it sound more like Shane Sams. And I wrote it, but I put it in there and it was amazing. And we used it word for word verbatim from the AI because it just knows everything that I would say. And I was like, man, that back half of that book was so much easier than the front half of that book because I was cheating. I had AI. I had the sum of all my brain power and the internet to be able to like write it actually how I speak. What do you think some like big obstacles that speakers, like people, there's a lot of people listening to this, they may be an entrepreneur, a podcaster, or a coach, or an author, even something, or they may be someone trying to get into speaking. What do you think a couple obstacles are for getting booked and paid to speak?
Well, I just gave a talk to and created it for coaches. I'm an ICF certified coach, so I was doing it for ICF chapters, just kind of starting into that.
What's ICF?
International Coach Federation. We're kind of it's the global standard in coaching, in all kinds of coaching. And so I asked all of them, like, what is standing in the way of you speaking? And I had already put out several points that we were going to go through because some of it is for them. It could be, I don't know what my message is, which it's usually, if you're a coach, it's what you love to coach around. It's what you hear, the problems that your clients are facing. It's figuring out your audience. That was probably the hardest thing for me, is figuring, because again, I did a pivot. I went from faith-based and a lot of parents into business. And I was like, okay, how do I now target this? And then finally, how do you get the leads? How do you find them? How do you communicate about them? But when I asked people, I found that most of their obstacles were all up here. They are just, it is a crisis of confidence. You feel like, who am I to be on that stage? I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing? And so most people would say, I'd say, what is the next step you need? They're like, I got to practice. I got to practice. I got to practice. I got to practice. And I'm like, at some point, you've already come with a ton of experience. That's what I love about speakers. They're usually not 20. They're usually older at different stages, 30s, 40s, 50s, but they come with this wealth of experience. You just want to find the way to be able to deliver it to audiences. So, in speaking about audience, I find that that's a big challenge for people. It's what's your lane? And it was recommended to me, and I recommend to people to find 3 lanes. And just kind of like with memberships and with coaching, you don't serve everybody. You serve people that have a specific issue. So that can be an industry. It could be something like education. It could be faith. It could be government, it could be military, but sometimes people come out of those areas. And sometimes you find that just what you love to speak on and what you have to share, your message, your topic, it's perfect for what the problems are. But you have to spend enough time in that industry. And I did a lot of informational interviews to figure out what their problems
What is
are.
your
Like,
voice?
yeah, I
What's
spent
the
a lot of
problems?
time.
Who's the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, I did a lot of, I thought, oh, I'll love startups. Like they're entrepreneurial. We have a ton of them out here in Boulder. So I started going to meetings. I started meeting with all kinds of people. I spoke at Denver Startup Week and I was like, I don't like them. I don't like
Yeah.
them. They're not my
And
people.
and it's okay not to like them.
Exactly.
It's someone else will talk to them, right?
Yeah,
They're going
there's
to be fine.
plenty.
Yeah.
But you're never going to be your authentic self if that's not the right audience. You know,
Yeah.
it's going to land and you're going to think something's wrong with you, and it just may be the wrong audience.
Yeah.
So that's where NSA and Toastmasters helping you practice, and whether you're hiring coaches or, you know, whatever you're doing, there's a lot of resources, but don't think you can do it alone. There are a lot of people.
And you can't do it all. It's so funny when I coach speakers and I talk to people, like when we get into our story pitch program and we're making the talk, and like people are like, I'm like, what do you talk about? And they're like, what do you want me to talk about? No, that's not the point.
Exactly.
And then it's like, well, tell me your life story. And I was like, well, I was born in a manger on December 25th. You know, it's like, no, I don't care about that part. What's the story we're trying to tell to this audience in 45 minutes? It's the chunk, like out of the middle of your story or wherever you start and stop, that really, really matters. And people have so much trouble dialing in on that. And then people, that practice comment you made is so true. Like everyone I talk that's going to go out and speak, they're like, well, I got to practice this and I got to rewrite it and I got to do it. And I'm like, no, what we need to do is create the talk as fast as possible and then go speak it in front of an audience 10 times. How did they feel? And how did you feel? Right. Maybe it's the wrong talk. Maybe it's the wrong audience. And then you have to pivot and adjust. The best way to get into speaking is to start speaking. And the mindset thing's funny too about the confidence thing. I know I'm going to humble as much as I can here, but I know people consider me an expert in certain things. I know people think I'm a good speaker. I know these things, but every time I'm about to go on stage, I still have imposter syndrome and I still feel that energy. And one of the best tips that I ever got was from a mentor of mine. He's a legendary sales speaker named James Smith, right? He's incredible. Shout out James Smith. But he told me once, I was getting ready to go out like for my like first thing or whatever. And he just looked, and I was like, man, he's like, are you nervous? I'm like, whatever. And he had heard me give this talk to a group of partners in a business because we were building it. And he's like, Shane, they don't know what you're going to say. I said, what do you mean? He goes, they don't know the words you're going to say. You can't make it. This is the only profession where you literally can't make a mistake. You just have to keep talking. And you just have to keep telling story. You can't mess it up, dude, because no one here knows what you're going to say. That freed me. That's when I started considering myself a speaker, because I was like, oh, I just have to speak. There is no right word. There is no wrong word. I can change it next time. I'm going to say it again. Exactly. Right. So like it just freed me from all that imposter syndrome all of a sudden. So whenever I go out on stage now, I just always look over at the one organization I speak with. I always look over at the producer and I go, say the words. They have no clue what I'm about to say. And we just laugh because it's just like so preposterous that you can go out and you can like do that. Do you have any mentors in speaking? Like, did you have someone that like took you under their wing or that you really respected and studied? Like, because I know mentors for me, like, you know, I will never not pay people to teach me how to do something because it's faster, it's better. I can shortcut it. And like mentors are everything like to me. Did you have anybody that you kind of ran with, looked up to, mastermind with?
Absolutely. I mean, my book coach, her name is Lorraine. She was a speaker all over the world. Linda Dillow, she worked with. So she kind of guided me as we wrote. We talk about how it would be spoken. So I worked with her every month for 3 years. So she kind of did a couple of them. Then I worked, I think it was right in the pandemic. Then I worked with the Speaker Lab. So
Grant Baldwin at the Speaker Lab.
And so
amazing.
Worked with them. And, you know, some things I already knew, some things they really helped me dial in my lanes. That was kind of the big thing because I was going through that pivot. And then for me, all of my mentors now really live in NSA because what I love about that organization is that people who are Hall of Famers, they're in the $1 Million Speakers Club, they stay in these local chapters while all the new people are coming. So you have access to the highest level of talent. And there is such a generous spirit with this group. So just being around them, you're like, well, heck, I can do it. And when they tell you how they got their start, and same thing, like you just have to value courage. And every time you go out and you do an okay job, or you're like, but I did it. I was courageous, every single time. So I have a variety in this organization in NSA. I don't even remember from Toastmasters years ago, but I will find people like in my lane, and then just those people who clearly are just willing to help. They just want to uplift other speakers.
And one thing I see new speakers make a mistake with, I think, is because they get in their head and they're like I'll always watch. I always know, like I was speaking at a real estate conference back in like, I don't know, March or June. I can't remember when it was. It was a few months ago. And I was the keynote, and I was like, clearly there was another guy there that I knew. His name was Adam. And I met this guy named Marlon Smith, and they were professional speakers. So they had their job. We were hanging out, we were cutting up. And then I see like this girl back behind the screens, just in a corner, all by herself, like rocking, like it was you from the sorority chapter, right?
Yeah.
And like she was in her head, and she was freaking out. And I like to go watch the professional speakers because I'm going to learn something. I would much rather prepare by sitting in the audience and watching 2 or 3 speakers before me, seeing what the audience did, seeing how they engaged, like seeing what they like kind of were working with. And I love to watch other speakers like during that process, because you just learn so much from seeing like other people. And and another lesson I learned when I started doing this, that's when my speaking started really getting better, is when I watched the pros do it. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. All that practicing is just getting in your head. Like, for example, if I have to do the same talk 2 days in a row, like it's like 2 events in a row, the second one always sucks, because I do the first one and I get in my head and I'm trying to fix stuff and change stuff, right? But how I actually practice for my talks now, I record myself one time doing it and I just listen to it. Like the morning of a talk, I don't do the talk like over and over and over again, because you're just going to get like so in your head. Yeah. So like, I think if people would just come to the audience, watch other speakers the day you're talking, like you're going to remember things, right? Something will go wrong on stage. That's another thing that happens all the time with speaking is war stories. I remember one time I would ask you what the craziest thing you've ever seen from the stage is. I was one time in an event. I'm on the stage. It was like 400 people in the room, right? And I'm talking and I'm looking down, and this lady was sitting in the front row. She was really attentive. And as a speaker, you look for the people that are paying the most attention to give you confidence. So I was looking at her. She was really paying attention. And she reached in one pocket and she pulled something out in her hand like this. And then she reaches up and she had like how like some sweaters have a pocket, like on the shoulder or something, like a zipper. She unzips the pocket, and a little sugar glider, flying squirrel looking animal crawls out onto her shoulder like a parrot on a pirate's shoulder. And she starts feeding this little flying squirrel. And I'm mid sentence and I'm like, but I didn't stop. I just kept talking because nobody else can see the flying squirrel. Like, it's crazy sometimes, like what can happen. And if you're in your own head, you're not able to deal with all these other little things. What's the craziest thing that's ever happened, like at a speaking event, or just anything weird? It doesn't have to be level of flying squirrel crawling out of a pocket. Okay,
I haven't had that. Now I'll be on the lookout for that.
Oh, you did say someone vomited in the middle of your talk. That's pretty good.
I just think of, again, back in the day when I would do these moms groups, these parenting groups, and some of the moms didn't put their kids into childcare. And so these kids would just wander the room. And I remember one of them just grabbed my leg. And I was thinking,
that's amazing.
Okay, like I can't like shoo him off. Like I'm gonna lose everybody. I'm the umpire. I come in, I don't know the team, and I don't want to be the hated one. So I was like, oh, who belongs to this one? But I am like, how do I do this? I've had other ones when I had the stand of a microphone where they just came and played Ring Around the Rosie with the stand.
It's like a Mayday pole.
And
they're like wrapping the ribbon.
I know. I was like, "Where's the parent?" Like they think it's super cute, and I was like,
"Oh man,
I gotta keep moving on this talk." Like so,
I picture you with the little kid, like when your kid grabs your leg and you're walking through your living room with a kid like hanging on your arm, and then I just picture that happening as you marching across the stage. Oh, that's great.
When no parent rushed the stage, I'm like, well, we're just gonna go with this, and
That's
hopefully they'll
amazing, man.
call them up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what's so fun about speaking is like, and like everyone should do it because it's just real and it's just live and there's just nothing like it.
Yes,
And it's just it gives you so much like life and energy more than podcasting, more than creating content. It's just so fun
it
to
is.
get in a room and you look around and like, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 45 minutes. You can't possibly predict it.
No.
You just have to say the words and hope that everything like kind of
And
works
if you
out.
do a Q&A, you really don't know what's going to
Oh
happen.
yeah, man. Yeah, you open the door, you have people are going to ask you things that you could never expect,
Right.
and you've got to learn how to say these magic words in Q&A. I don't know, but I'll find out for you. Come talk to me at the bottom of the stairs after the stage. Yeah.
Well, I just one piece of advice that I got on that I think is really helpful. Don't ever end your talk with Q&A because you don't
Mm,
know where it's going to go. You can totally lose control. You need to go where the audience is asking questions. Always include that toward the end, but then come back to say, and then I'm going to conclude with one final story or one final quote or whatever it is, so that you kind of own that space and take them back to the theme that you are trying to communicate.
I've got a coach friend named Mike Pensioni, and he coaches speakers for like body language and on stage stuff. And he starts all of his clients with planning the first minute and the last minute, like owning that last part. I've never done that before though. I need to totally have a story after Q&A whenever I do that. That is really, really smart. Yeah.
Well, and I'm using a tool called Talkadot. Are you familiar with that, Shane?
No, talk about.
So it's
No.
in the last year, I've seen it everywhere in our NSA world. We use it in our meetings. Actually, it is a software package, I guess, but really they give you a slide with the QR code. So at the very end, people can review you. I used to do
Gotcha.
survey cards. It's very hard to do all that virtually, but it is an incredible tool. It's really well built and it takes a couple minutes. And so I will do that. If I'm doing Q&A, I'll do that. Then I do this review slide because I'm also getting speaking leads from it. People are saying, I
Smart.
book speakers, I don't. They're giving you reviews. So, because we always want to get testimonials. Every time you're out there, if you can get film and testimonials, because you need it to build a speaker reel or to update it, and then you need actual, people's words. So then I go through that and actually put on fun music. I usually do something with Earth, Wind, and Fire for that.
There you go.
And then I say, because I don't want people leaving in that. And I say, and as soon as you're finished, I'm going to conclude with one final story because I want them staying in the room to finish it. But it's like just 2 minutes. But that way, I'm always having to think. I can't go into some big story, but it needs to be something that brings them back. It's inspiring.
You
Whatever
get the final word of the talk.
Yes, yeah.
So smart. That's really, really smart. You just made me a better speaker, Dale Wilshire. That's what I'm talking about. What's the favorite place you've ever spoken at? Like, do you have one like that stands out?
Gosh,
Because that's one of the cool things too. I'm like, I often, as I'm speaking, especially when I'm doing the big stages, I'm like, how is this even possible that I get to do this? Like we did the LA Convention Center, and there were 10,000 people, and there was no risers. It was all floor. And it looked like Lollapalooza, man, when you walked out there. It was so unbelievable. And I was just walking out on stage. It was probably the least nervous I'd ever been, which is hilarious because it was one of the biggest crowds that ever talked. But I was like, it's burned into my mind that 3 steps walking up and seeing that crowd roll out from me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. Like,
it is.
Do you have any places like that?
I think for me, it's always a women's event, and it's a live event versus a virtual. I do plenty of virtual, but you can't experience people in the same way. And when they're laughing, they're already on mute. So you don't get that energy kind of build, and always in the room. And that's, I love speaking to women because there's certain things that we can laugh about and kind of know. And they just are really like, they're authentic. They are relaxed and they are engaged and they are sharing things and they're laughing, they're crying. So to me, there are a couple of women's groups I think of, and it's kind of like, who's your favorite child? Like, I feel like if I say it,
no, for sure.
but I remember this one conference in Hutch, Kansas, that this group, they were like so ready. They were so excited. I loved every single person there. I got to do 2 events. I was the opening and closing keynote. I was kind of the show, and man, they were just so engaged. So, I mean, when I get to engage with them and they are ready for it, that's the best.
It's beautiful, man. So, real quick, let's just wrap up here with telling everybody a little bit about your coaching and stuff like that. Like, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you? I mean, I want to say too, like, we met. I remember, you remember people that stand out for sure. And like, I remember when we were at one of our events, and you came out to me, and our mutual buddy Stephen Faust. We were like, we're like, whatever we got to do to get her around our orbit. I don't care what the deal is. I don't care what the thing is. Like, let's just figure it out, because she's absolutely amazing. So I want to give you some like straight kudos. You're a vibe. Like, you got aura. Like, you're absolutely amazing. Like, if anybody wanted to reach out to you, look into your content, and tell them where to go.
Yeah, well, thank you, Shane. That means a lot, because I mean, you're definitely one of my heroes. So I love Stephen Faust. He is as well. So I can be found at my website, which is yourauthenticpersonality.com. You can also get there by dalewilshire.com. There's a lot of resources there. There's some coaching and speaking and different personality fun quizzes that you can take. And probably my primary channel is LinkedIn. I mean, I'm certainly on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, but LinkedIn is my favorite channel. So you can message me there. You can certainly do a contact form. If something here resonates, I'd love to talk to you.
This was a masterclass on speaking to drive your business. Dale, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thanks, Shane. Great to be here.
All right, y'all. That wraps up my interview with Dale Wilshire. What an amazing person. Just an amazing speaker, amazing entrepreneur, really out there doing the work, really out there connecting with people, really out there refining her craft. I mean, Dale came through our story pitch program, and we just sat to see someone who had been speaking for years and years and years, used it to grow their company, and still willing to put in the craft of it, the art of it, the science of it, to dial in her talk so that it would be more impactful, reach more people, help her business grow. I just have so much respect for her. So check out all the stuff that she's doing online. If you're into leadership, you want to go and maximize your time and talents, and go back and listen to this. If you want to be a speaker, everyone should want to say their words. Everyone should want to speak their message. Your story matters. And if you transform that story into a great event that you can put on a webinar or a stage, you can make a massive impact on your audience, and it will make a massive impact on your bottom line. I really fall back to this thing that I say all the time is, if I say words, things happen, right? If you're going on podcasts, that's a speaker. If you're being a guest on podcasts, if you're doing your own podcast, you're a storyteller. If you're on stages, if you're doing webinars, if you're writing sales copy or emails, get good at speaking, and everything else will get good in your life. All right, y'all, that is all the time we have for the Shane Sam Show this week. Thank you so much for listening. Until I see you again, get out there, get on a stage, get on a podcast, and light it up. We'll see you next time.